YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Another quick game of Planetary I Spy going on here. Now today I'm going to be doing a bit of a more in-depth look at the Cyclops statue head that I published just yesterday, because I think it warrants a little bit more than a 2-minute video, this one, because it's really cool. And I've got it here up in my video player. This is the video I put up yesterday, which you can see the title, Mars Cyclops statue. Now, the first thing that drew me to this when I was looking through this large image from NASA was the ear. Now, even though I haven't got this full size on screen, and this is completely raw, this image, this is how it comes from NASA. I think they've already white balanced it to a point anyway. You can see an ear, and that is a very clear looking humanoid-like ear there. And when you actually zoom in a bit, I'll pause it there, because this is probably the clearest it gets, this image, when it's this size. Now, as I've said many times before with these Curiosity images, because the camera is so crap, and it's only like a 1.5 meg camera, the mass cam, basically, if you try and enlarge things too much, they will look worse and worse and worse. And quite often it's better to use a smaller viewer and look at things from a bit further back, because when you zoom in too far, you're not going to get any sharper, because basically there's not enough pixels covering this area. Now, this actual, when you get this from the TIFF image, which I got from here, I'll have links to all these, by the way. The TIFF image is this one here. Now, this is very recent. Now, NASA have just put up these two large panoramics on their main site, but you won't find them on the main pages. You have to go to other means to get them, which is a bit annoying. So I'll put links to these anyway. The one we're looking at here is this large one here. Now, if you haven't got a big computer, you may want to get the large JPEG. The large JPEG's pretty good, and it's better than what you would get if you look at the individual images from this area, because they haven't been quite so badly compressed and resized and everything else, so they're not too bad. But really, you want the TIFF, because the TIFF is the real raw image, and it hasn't been messed with. But it's a large file, and you may struggle with that one. It's a shame they don't do one in between, like a ping or something like that. The European Space Agency tend to do pings as well, and they're sort of in between the JPEG and the TIFF size, which is really good, because they're much better than the JPEGs, but they're not massive, huge, great files that you can't open on your screen or on your laptop or whatever, you know. So it's a shame they don't do pings as well, really. But never mind. The TIFF is good, and it's nice and clear, and it's not too bad. Now I've got this up in my graphics processor here. Now, this is the individual clip. This is the individual photograph that this was taken from. Now, look at the color difference here. Look what they've done to it. Now, this reminds me of what they've done with the Dingo Gap image, where you look at the so-called raw image, and it's just that browny puke color with the puke filter over it, like we normally get. And then they've released a panoramic with no mention of it being white balanced or anything, at least as far as I know. And it's completely different. And they've really cranked up the contrast there and darkened the image, maybe to show the background a bit more. I'll show you the entire image in a minute. But look at the difference. Let's do that now. Let's have a look at the full size image I've got here on my desktop. No, we don't want that. We don't want that. We'll come back to these in a minute. Now, when you look at I won't open the TIFF because it won't open. I'll open the JPEG, because that's only about 6 meg. Now, I think they may have just really upped the contrast on this to show some of the features further back, which is really interesting. I mean, this is really cool, some of this. But if you look at the stuff nearer the camera, these large rocks are almost completely blacked out. So they've really mucked with the contrast here, and it's actually really difficult to see any detail in here because it's gone too dark. But I think what they're really interested in is this. This is the route that the rover is going to be taking Now obviously the rover's down here somewhere. Yeah, probably down here at the bottom, and we're looking right over to what we call the road to Mount Shaw, or the road up Mount Shaw. Now the rover's probably going to drive over this mount here, or perhaps around it this way, don't know which exactly, and it's going to drive over along here. And there's a nice long straight road for it to drive along there. That should be nice and easy for it. Whether that's natural or whether it's been made, who knows, but it certainly looks like a road, and it goes all the way up here. Now other people have mentioned this road. From the word go, we spotted this almost as soon as the rover landed in some of the large panoramic images. Now this is where it's going to go, up this hill, and this is like a dried out river valley. Now this would have probably had a torrent of water coming down it at one point, like rapids, and would have fed the lake in Gale Crater. This is all of the meltwater would have come off the mountain, which probably had snow and ice on it, which would have melted, of course, and this was probably gushing with water at least some of the year round. And this is where the rover is going to be driving. It's going to be driving through this little valley here. Now, don't be fooled. This is a long way away. This is miles away from the rover. The rover's down here. Now, this is the object we were just looking at. It's right over here, near the center of the image, right near the middle of the image there. You just zoom straight into the large rock in the middle. There he is. And that's how dark it is. And unfortunately, it's in heavy shadow, so you can see the eye, you can see the ear. Now, I saw the ear straight away, and I thought, that's an ear. That's a humanoid ear. And there's also this weird dude here. I don't know what this is. It is really, really strange. I'll show you that in more detail in a bit. That is really weird. I couldn't figure out what that is. Probably just a rock, but it's a really interesting looking rock. It's got some very funny features to it. So yeah, this is where the rover's going to be going. It's going to be driving over here, along this road here, which starts right back there. Really can't see it, and it goes all the way along. This is probably a couple of miles, probably more than that. And to get to this point is probably at least 5 or 6 miles, or perhaps even 7 or 8. It's very deceptive. Now, a lot of people struggle with this, and I do, because the perception is really difficult to get your head around. But there is this image map that I picked up the other day. Let's get rid of those a minute. Where is it? Here it is. Now, this is one of the first images that they published a couple of years back when the rover landed. In fact, it was almost 3 years ago now, 2.5, 3 years ago. And this gives you the distance from the Curiosity Rover, the actual camera. And this thing, I actually published this thing here. It looks like a helmet or some kind of object here. This is metallic. It almost looks like a spearhead or an arrowhead or some kind of helmet or component of some part of machinery or something. Now that was I think was the first to publish that. It was on my website for ages before anyone made a video of it. But they're saying this is 125 meters from the camera. Now I don't agree with that. I really do not. Feet maybe, but not meters. I find this really quite odd. And then you've got 230 meters here. Then you've got 3.7 kilometers. This line here, and then you've got 5.5, and then 6. Now, so yeah, the distance between us and the mountain is a lot more than you think. It's very deceptive. It's a very large mountain, and it slopes quite gradually, which is very deceptive. And in some images it looks totally fake, and some it looks more real. And depending on the light conditions and the actual atmospheric conditions on Mars, it can look very, very odd indeed, and look completely fake sometimes. But that is probably because they do actually probably airbrush over some of these images. And we do know they've done it with the moon images from the Apollo missions. They've airbrushed them. They've changed the backgrounds. They've painted over the stars in the sky to make it look nice and neat and tidy. They do this all the time, NASA. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if some of these images are quite heavily doctored, especially if there's something in the background they don't want you to see. It's too easy to do now. During the Apollo missions in the early 70s, it was a lot harder to do these things, and they generally would just cut the top of the image off where the skyline was, and then just paste something else in, or just paint it out, you know, as I've mentioned in some of my recent moon videos. So this gives you an approximate idea of how far. I can't really see that being 125 meters away. I could be completely wrong. The rover camera is about 7 foot off the ground, so it's very deceptive. And there's no real point of reference here. There's no cars, there's no people in most of these images. So you don't really know how far away these things are. So I thought I'd show you that anyway. This is PIA 16104 Fig 2. There's versions without the measurements on as well you can get. But that gives you a sort of rough approximation of how far some of this stuff away it can be from the actual rover. Now, here's where the rover was a few days ago. It's moved a bit more since then. I think it's moved around to here now, where my cursor is. And the idea, as I showed you a minute ago, is to drive over here and then up here and up Logan Pass, as it's called, which is that river valley, which in fact goes all the way up Mount Sharp, almost to the very top. I mean, this could be quite dangerous for the rover. It may well get damaged or stuck. They have been doing some very detailed studies of this area at NASA using the high-rise images, apparently, and have been trying to very carefully work out the safest route for the rover without putting it in too much risk, because it's already quite badly damaged. The wheels are not in good shape, and whoever designed those wheels needs shooting, really, honestly. Okay, let's get on with this anyway. I'm getting diverted here. Let's get on with this image, the Mars Cyclops statue. Now, this is about as clear as it gets, and you can see from this distance, you can see an eye with a white eyeball, a very clear ear, which is rather large, and you can see a lip here, and part of his nose here. Now, whether the nose is supposed to be that flat, or whether it's broken off, don't know. I'm guessing some of it's probably broken off, and this is very common with protruding parts of statues. As you see on Earth, you often see the fingers or arms broken off, or the limbs broken off, and often the head completely broken off, and just a headless statue. We've got them in just down the road from us in Bath, in the UK. We've got Roman stuff, and a lot of them have been renovated now, but most of them were headless or armless at the Roman baths until they were repaired. So the protruding parts are the first bits to break off with any sort of statue, really. So. But there may well be a complete statue under this sand. I would love to dig under this thing. I really would. But yeah, there's the raw image. Now I'll go to my graphics processor here, and we'll have a comparison again. Here's the one from the original, so-called raw image, which is much more brown, but much lighter. But when you zoom in, you've got all these blocks. That's where it's been resized. It's lost probably between 30 and 60% of its original data. At least 30% is missing now because they've compressed it. But you can see it's there, and you can just blur these things to get rid of the blocks and stuff like that. I use Gaussian blur. There's the Gaussian blur. Let's do that. About 1.2 should get rid of that. Let's try 1.2. There we go. Oh, that's too much. It should have been more like 1 or something. Let's try again. Blur. Gaussian blur. There's no shortcut to that, unfortunately. Let's go to 75 actually. That may not do it completely, but a little bit. There we go. See, now that's all disappeared. But you haven't got as much information there as you would if you go to the TIFF. But you can see it's a face. There's a nose, mouth, ear, and an eye, and there may well be another eye just hidden from view, just round the side there. Okay, so let's have a look at the. Now this is from the TIFF image, very dark, blackened out, almost as if they intentionally didn't want us to see too much detail in the foreground. But you can see the eye more clearly there because there's more contrast between the shadow and the light. But this whole part of the face is in shadow, yet this eye is showing with, if I zoom right in, you can see an eyeball there. Okay, there's an actual pupil with an eye, a pupil here with an eyeball. Now that to me looks like an inlaid piece of stone. Perhaps it's semi-precious or something. It could be some kind of opal or some other kind of white-looking rare or precious, semi-precious stone. Who knows? Now here's the same image. I've just brightened that up considerably and played around with the contrast a bit. And it does get mucky when you do that because this was almost black. This face here is almost completely black. But that, if you don't zoom in too far, you can see that there's a nose starting to show better there, and a bit more of the mouth, and the cheek is sticking out a bit more. But it was really difficult with this because it was such in such heavy shadow, so I really had to crank up the contrast and brightness here. And what I've done here is use the burn tool and lighten the eye detail and highlighted it very, very, not much. I just highlighted it and then I brightened up the whole image, so that eye's really kind of jumped out at you. Crazy. I mean, you can see why I called it Cyclops, but there may be another eye, or the other eye may have fallen off. I suspect the other eye would have been here, but there's probably just a hole or a little gap there where the other eyes come off. Who's to say? I mean, if you look at some of my other Mars finds, there's this. This is not one I discovered. I think other people found this before me. There was one near this guy. This is at the Dingo Gap area, and here he is. Now this was just to the behind the main statue, or what may or may not be a statue. This was just behind it to the right, I think, and there's what looks like another carved skull or head, if you want to call it that also seems to have a white eye with a pupil. I'll play that through a little bit. This is from my video, Mars Carved Conehead Statues, latest from ArtAlienTV. I actually go into some of the other things that are near the main statue, which is that dude. And there's a few other interesting things in the area. But this one got my attention because it looks like it's a skull. This is the back of the skull. This looks like a nasal cavity here. It looks like there's some sort of teeth there. And this looks like an eyeball. And there looks to be another one here, but you can't see it so well. I'll play it through, and it does enhance a little bit. But I really should have gone in more with the contrast with this, really. But that looks like an eye with an eyeball, and it seems to me that that these burial items, if they are skulls or carvings, whatever they are, they're putting the eyes back in. They're actually putting eyes in these carvings or whatever they are. These burial artifacts or statues or whatever they are, they're putting the eyes in like they do. The Moai in Easter Island have eyes stuck on. They have white eyes with pupils stuck onto them. We're used to seeing them without them because they've fallen off, but it was quite common for these to be stuck on. So yes, I would expect there to be room for another eye just there that's probably fallen off, and it may be lying in the sand. Who knows? But what you've really, with some of these images, really got to brighten them up. Quite often they're too pasty, much like the so-called raw image here. Quite often they're way too pasty. But this, unfortunately, was the other way round. And if you're going to see anything, it's probably going to be in the foreground. And it looks like they're deliberately trying to obfuscate the foreground so that we can't see too much detail. Because, I mean, there's such a huge difference between this and that there. I mean, it's obviously been treated differently. Maybe this is the raw image and this has been obfuscated. Who knows which is which. I know this one's been resized. But it's much lighter. And they've really, really gone in with a heavy contrast there. So there we go. I thought I'd show you that in a bit more detail. Let's go back to there a minute. Let's get in really close. And have a close look at the actual nose. Now, all I've done with that is really brighten the eye with the burn tool, and just enhance the contrast in there, And I've obviously blurred this a little bit, but this came from the TIFF, so the TIFF is better quality. and you don't really need to blur it very much because it hasn't been resized. So there we go. Is it a Cyclops, or has one of his eyes fallen off? I think the latter. And you can actually see some mouth detail here. If I zoom back a bit, you can see some mouth detail. You can see some nose detail. You can see the eye very clearly, and a very big and very clear ear. He's even got an ear cavity there, which is quite dark, and ear structure. I mean, what is very strange, and I haven't altered the colour on this, is that the actual face is kind of brown, dark brown, and the actual head is blue. So it almost looks like it's made of two different types of stone, as if this is a sort of headdress, or perhaps possibly even the stone has been tinted or painted. That is a possibility. Now, people always assume that statues are just stone colour, but actually the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans actually painted their statues. The ancient Greeks especially, as did the Egyptians, they were painted in full colour. They had flesh colour and stuff painted on. They had bright, deep blues and reds and gold and all sorts of very, very rich colours painted onto them. We're used to seeing them in just stone colour because all the pigment has been washed away and eroded over probably thousands of years. And it's quite possible that some of these Martian artifacts are the same. They may well have pigment painted onto them, and this may be the reason why the face here is a very different colour to the head. This, or one or both, may be actually tinted and painted. So that is a possibility. Okay, so this I'll just show you this other thing I was going to show you. This is that other weird rock which is near that Cyclops dude. This is just to the right of him, and this is really weird. This seems to have an eye and some teeth, but it's probably just me matrixing that. I've brightened it right up there, and if you get too close it doesn't get any better, but this was weird, and it's got a weird bit sticking out. It looks kind of manufactured. Whatever it is, it looks very unusual, and I'm still trying to figure out what shape it is and what it might relate to, but it may be nothing. It may just be a very ugly looking piece of rock, but this does look like kind of like a mouth here, with teeth, two upper teeth there, 2 or 3, and 3 or 4 in a row at the bottom there, and a chin here, and an eye there. It kind of looks like a skull that's been smashed in or something, with something around it. I mean, this thing sticking out here looks like something else kind of wrapped around it, like a part of a helmet or who knows. I mean, this is really weird. It looks like something out of a horror film. You know, it really is quite scary. And there's also this guy, which I just found. I'll be doing a video on this guy as well. This is from the same image, and I did a few enhancements of it. He's got quite a clear mouth and eyes. I'll be coming back to that in a day or two, so I'll keep you posted on that. So stay tuned, more to come. Looks to be lots more statues and artifacts in this area, and things are getting interesting again. Now the rover's actually starting to move, and we're not stuck with it like it was back since November. It's actually starting to move now, so we should be getting some good stuff. When it goes up Mount Sharp here, I would expect there to be some interesting stuff up here. There's an interesting thing. Now, I don't know if you can make this out, but there's some kind of weird structure here. I don't know what that is. It may just be natural. But there's some weird stuff going on up here, and we're not quite close enough to see it yet. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing what all this stuff is up here. And this whole thing is very, very odd. If you look at it logically, you have lots of different coloured rock here. I mean, a lot of these rocks are blue or brown in the foreground here, and the most of Mount Sharp is this brown colour, which is completely natural. But then you have this, what NASA call diverse strata or diverse geology or whatever they call it. I can't remember what they said about it the other day on their site, but this whole area I've been pondering over ever since they landed on near Mount Sharp. it's much lighter in colour to all the surrounding rock, and I mean this is miles away, so we're not going to see a great deal of detail. But this looks like a castle or something here, and these could be buttresses. There's lots of upright structures here. I may be wrong, but it looks almost like a lot of this has been built, and some of these things up here look like eroded and very heavily damaged pyramid structures and stuff like that, like this one here. I don't know, they may be natural. Some of them probably, most of it is probably natural, but I don't know. Some of it, to me, looks odd because it's such a different colour to the surrounding area, and it doesn't match. It almost looks like it's made of a different type of concrete or something. I don't know. And as I've said before, some of Mount Sharp, some of these mounds look very artificial, and they look like they're made of that crap that they make stuff out of at theme parks. They make the sort of fake buildings out of, you know, that sort of resin, that sort of fake sort of stonework, you know. It's really weird, and there is no real explanation for why this area looks so different. I don't know. More to come on that, I'm sure, but it is very strange that this is such a different colour. And when you play around with the contrast with this image, it really becomes even more obvious. Let me just show you quickly. I did do where is it? In here somewhere. Not there. There we go. I did do some enhancements here of that. I'll flick through these very quickly. There we go. There's that area. Now, when you just up the contrast sort of 30%, it's obvious that this area here is a completely different colour to all the other rock, and that goes for miles and miles around. This is miles across. It's a good couple, at least a couple of kilometres from there to there. So it's quite a large area we're looking at here. But this goes right along this part of Mount Sharp. It's very weird, and there's something going on here, just here. I don't know what it is. Could be a building, could be a collapsed structure. I don't know. But this is going to get interesting. I'm really looking forward to this when it goes up here. There's some other clips. There's a wider angle. And there I've really upped the contrast a bit and brightness. So you can. This makes it more obvious how different that is to the surrounding area. So who's to know what we're going to find up here? There could be some very interesting stuff. Or it may get a lot less interesting. There may be a lot less up there than there is down here. Because obviously if there were things up there that were of any interest, a lot of them may have washed down to where we are now. So it may get less interesting. There may be less up there than there is down here, down at the bottom. Okay guys, I'll call it a day there. Thanks for watching everybody. This is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Check out my playlists that I've been doing recently, especially the boats and ships. That's starting to get a lot of views now. Thanks for watching everybody. I'll see you soon.